Okay. Well, thank you all for coming to this publishing Q&A session hosted by Earthwords, the undergraduate literary review. My name is Sophia, and I am the executive editor for Earthwords this year. As a short introduction, Earthwords is the oldest undergraduate literary magazine at the University of Iowa, and our mission is to showcase the best literary and artistic endeavors of students attending the University of Iowa, including poetry, fiction, nonfiction, drama, art, and photography. Our publication provides its staff with the experience of producing a literary magazine in real time by ethically reading, selecting, and supporting the work and authors found in every issue. The Earthwords team is committed to broadening its accessibility, empowering our community, and promoting equity and justice for underrepresented voices. Although the team's style and length change every year, Earthwords' dedication to promoting the diverse array of undergraduate creative works is a constant. So that's a little bit about us. And then a little intro to Jacob, who's joining us today. Jacob Sammon is a managing editor for Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. There, he helps oversee the production and schedule of titles across multiple imprints to ensure every book makes it from acquisition to bookstore shelves on time, as well as overseeing the backlist reprint process. His passion for working in the publishing industry, sorry, was inspired by his time pursuing a bachelor's degree in English and creative writing and a certificate in publishing at the University of Iowa. During his undergraduate years, he honed his skills as a managing editor of several literary magazines. Upon graduation, he enrolled in the Columbia Publishing course and furthered his education on all aspects of book and magazine publishing. And he also was a previous executive editor of Earthwords, so alumni here. Let's give a warm welcome to Jacob. Hey, Jacob, if you want to give a little spiel of your own.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks everybody for being here. I um, am super excited to get to talk to you more. I kind of just want to give a brief introduction, and then you can ask questions. We can have kind of a conversation. So essentially, as Sophia said, I went to the University of Iowa. And when I was at Iowa, I was first introduced to the concept of book publishing as a thing that really existed as like a full industry. I knew that there were editors, but I didn't really know how broad and like how rich the industry actually is. And for the longest time, I mean, I went to the University of Iowa. I'm born and raised in Iowa. But I went there because I wanted to be a writer. And then after I got to university, and they have the great writing school and everything. And after I got to the university, I realized that I also want healthcare and a regular paycheck, and neither of those two things are used in the same sentence as writer. So I was like, okay, I need to find like an actual job for myself. So I realized that book publishing was pretty tangentially related to writing, and then I would, be able to work within the industry and then maybe make some connections and get better at my passion that I like to do. And then maybe one day I could live without health care, and, be okay. So we'll see if that dream ever comes to fruition. But I really kind of fell in love with book publishing as an idea through the University of Iowa, through the opportunities that were on campus, like the surplus of literary magazines that offer different kinds of events and submission opportunities and the community that they have. It's really lovely. And so then I worked as an editor, a fiction editor initially, for Earthwords, and that's when I was like, yes, I've determined I'm going to be an editor, and no one can change my mind. And then I got an internship at PRH, with, Penguin Random House, and it's the biggest of the big five publishers. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And it was an editorial in children's books, which is exactly what I thought I wanted. And I did the internship and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want. Now I just need to be able to get a full-time job in the industry. And I didn't really know the best way to go about doing that. The book publishing industry is very centered in New York City. So I, was nervous as being somebody who was born and raised in Iowa, has no family anywhere like further east than Iowa itself, how I could potentially like find an apartment and find a job in New York City of all places. So I thought the Columbia Publishing course, which is a 6-week summer program, would be a good like benchmark for me to like step into to learn as much as I can, build connections with people. They boast like a 95% job placement rate within a year of graduating from the program. And so I was like, that's a pretty good deal. Then I realized that it was $12,000 for 6 weeks. And I was like, whoa. And I just kept telling myself it's an investment in my future. And that's true. And it is. And it was an investment in my future that I am so glad that I made. It allowed me to get connected to about 115 other people, all roughly my age, who were all looking into the job industry at the same time as me, who were all looking to move to New York. So it gave me a great network of potential roommates, potential colleagues, etc. And then, whenever a job would get posted, we would all like talk about it and we would help each other. It was actually what I was worried would be a not like a very toxic situation was actually very nice and very pleasant. So I was very fortunate in that regard and I learned a lot. And when I was applying to this course, they kept telling us, 50% of you are coming in here telling us that you're going to want to be editors and most of you are going to change your minds by the end of the course. And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm not going to change my mind. I've known essentially what I'm going to do since I was like in fifth grade. Once I set my mind to something, it's not changing. And then they said, you're going to change your mind again and again. And I continued to say, no, I'm not. And then you know what I did? I did change my mind. I learned that editorial was not something that I was as passionate about as I thought I once was. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And if you're curious, I can definitely tell you more. Um, but I found myself being more driven to the managing side of editorial on like the administration side. So rather than actually working with the authors directly and developing their stories and helping them craft their books, I work on like the liaising between departments within my company. And so I make sure that the book once it gets in the editor's hand, then gets to our other departments on time. So gets to the design department and gets to the marketers and gets to the publicists and gets to the like our production folks. And I just make sure it gets from point A to point B on time, which is really nice. It really like satisfies that type A portion of my brain, and then I get to work on a bunch of spreadsheets and things like that. So it's that aspect of the job. But the best part, I think, about my job is that I get to do that like very organized bit. And then I still get to look at a ton of books and I still get to actually work on them too. So when there are picture books and graphic novels and young adult books and stuff coming out, we usually have, like 20 to 30 books come out per season. I get to look at all of them instead of as an editor getting to look at four or five. I get to have my little grubby hands on all 30 of these books and not as in depth because I'm working on so many different books. But I still get to look at them. I still get to give advice and then support the teams. And then I get to set up meetings with people and just gab away because I just know how to shut up. So it's like a really great middle ground for me in terms of still getting to work on the books and then also getting to do the administrative side of things where I find myself like where my brain gravitates towards. I love me a calendar. So after realizing those things about myself, I decided, yeah, I should maybe apply to managing editorial jobs, the things that actually are more suited towards my skill set, rather than something that I think that I'm supposed to do, which is going into editorial. And it's been all the better for me. I really, really love it. And I got an internship at Macmillan in the managing editorial department. I became a contractor and then I became full time. So it was like just slowly climbing the ladder. Um, so now I am actually, as of today, an assistant managing editor because I got promoted. So that's very exciting. I know. Yay. Yeah. Clap for me. The Jeb Bush, please clap moment for Jacob. I, I know, very exciting, but that's the nice thing about Macmillan uh, is that they are committed to their people. They support you. Like they want to bring in interns and they want to convert those interns into full time and they want to continue growing the talent up like that. And so I'm very grateful for the team and for my staff because publishing is a very people-minded industry. They do care about people. And that's one of the things I like the most about it. If you ask anybody like what their favorite thing about publishing is, usually within like the top one or two answers, it's the people. Sometimes it's sometimes it's the books, right? But the other times it's the people that work there, and that's really excellent. you'll notice that no one will ever list the money as one of the top 100 reasons, and that's because it doesn't pay very well. So, yeah, so much for me like wanting a regular paycheck and living in New York City. It's still pretty close to the starving artist salary, I would say. But things getting better and change is always like being pushed. So I do think that the publishing industry is moving in the right direction, as though I'm like cautiously optimistic about everything. But there's a lot of really passionate people that are looking to make a difference in the world, especially within publishing, within the industry, and using books to make a difference. And that's why I like working here so much and why I like working in publishing, because it really means something. And that was something that I learned while at the University of Iowa, that there are people who are committed to providing stories that like just aren't told enough from perspectives that are not heard from enough. And I'm glad that there has been a stronger push from publishers to continue promoting those stories and to continue pushing for those stories despite the political environment and what is being handed down from like the toppest branch of the government, like despite any executive orders and things. The book publishing, like big five companies, specifically Macmillan, has been uh, like steadfast in promoting diverse books and supporting authors that need it. And that's been really lovely. And it feels extra important now, especially for kids' books. So I hope I can convince you to get involved and answer any questions about these things. Yeah, I could talk all day about book publishing. I've already been at work all day, so I've definitely talked about it all day, and I am excited to talk more. If anyone has any questions, happy to answer, and then we can kind of turn into a conversation if you'd like. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacob, and congratulations on your promotion. That's so exciting. Yeah, if anyone wants to say any questions or oh, we have one in the chat from Anna. Thank you. So how does Macmillan find the author's stories that you feel are important to publish? And does everyone submit to you or do you seek out writers?
And good question. So Macmillan definitely. Okay, so within the big five specifically, so Macmillan, Penguin Random House, Hachette, HarperCollins, and Simon and Schuster, who kind of just like those are the ones that like run the publishing industry really and set the standard for a lot of the indie publishers, like the indie publishers being like Grey Wolf, and Milkweed, and some of those others. So the big five really kind of set like the standard for publishing, and because they're so huge, most books are required to have agent representation to come to us. So usually an author will, write a book and then send out their book child out to get like represented by an agent. And then eventually after the book might be rejected 50 to 100 times, eventually that book will be like supported by an agent. And then that agent will then send this book out to editors that they have relationships with, usually, like within the big five or the indie publishers. Most big five publishers don't accept any non-agented submissions. Um, and they almost always need an agent to be submitted. There's a couple caveats I can get to in a second. But the indie presses, sometimes those will just accept like blind submissions just because they're smaller and they are able to. That's the glorious thing about independent publishers is they're able to move faster, and react more and really like focus on specific, genres or like find their niche. So like you'll have like boutique publishers who will just like sometimes only do like one genre, like romantasy, for example, etc. Whereas big five publishers will do kind of everything. But they're much slower to make differences in, if that makes sense. So the only reason why you would not need an agent when you want to submit a book is if an editor is reaching out to you, probably because you have like a million followers on social media or you're a billionaire and they think that you have a big following and they want to publish your book. Um, and the reason why publishers reach out to rich people and people with big followings for books that they think will earn money is because publishing is not a money-making business. We make as publishers make very little money per copy of a book. Like usually our profit margins are less than $1 per book, which is not very much money at all, which also kind of explains why the salaries are not super high also. Um, but for that reason, we need like the giant, like we need the celebrity, like my I help publish Jimmy Fallon's picture books, for example. So, like, we need the Jimmy Fallon picture books of the world to be able to help fund us to publish the other smaller authors that might not make, that might not sell enough copies of their books. So, like, for every
Hey Jacob, I think you're frozen right now.
one celebrity author, that book
Hey
can
Jacob.
then essentially fund. Wait, can you hear me now?
Yes, could you go back like 30 seconds?
Yeah, of course. There's a horrible storm happening in New York City right now. Uh, so sorry about that. Yes, okay. So essentially, I think the big, like celebrity, we need like celebrity books in order. Is this sounding familiar? That we need celebrity books and those bigger, higher profile authors, because without them, the smaller authors don't often get their books published because it costs so much money to make a book. And so, really, in order to get these books, like, really, the only reason why an editor would reach out without an agent is because you would have a giant following. But otherwise, like, you don't need to be active on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok in order to get a book deal. It helps, sure, because you have a built audience, but really, I mean, the book industry is just so it like honestly just came with that book and this like book came with a physical die. Oh no. I think my Wi-Fi is maybe cutting out just a bit again. Let's see.
It's really funny. It sounded like you were going like
I'm gonna connect to my phone hotspot just so that way I don't like continue.
Sounds good.
Okay. You okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. Let's hear it for the Verizon 5G still being intact. That's not a paid sponsor, I wish. So yeah, that essentially, I would say, kind of wraps up what you were talking about, what I was talking about with the question. But so to get to your follow-up question about just any conversation about changing that process amidst the push to publish more diverse perspectives, any upcoming innovative solutions about how to shift costs, priorities. I know this is a great question. I wish, truthfully, that there was more conversations happening. Um, I that's that's the reason why I feel cautiously optimistic about the change in the publishing industry landscape. There's a push for us to like represent diverse authors and to have like a more diverse staff and to like I don't bring people from like all around the country. My company is like fully remote optional, so I can work from home whenever I want. That's really nice. But Macmillan is one of the only publishers that actually allows that. Um, and so eh, during COVID, everyone got to work from home and it was totally fine. And then we all proved that we can work from home as a company. And then a lot and across the publishing spectrum, and then after COVID ended, they brought back the back to work mandates, back to the office mandates, and I do think that limits the staff that we have. I think it limits the people that we can actually employ because publishing pays very little, and New York's cost of living is like 3 times the entry level salary. So like people say like to be happy in New York, you have to make $150,000, and publishing pays like $50,000 entry level salary. Like whoa. So no one like if you don't have like a financial safety net at all, or if you grew up below the poverty line, you're not gonna have an easy time finding a job in publishing because it's a lot of people want you to be able to be in the office in New York City. And so I think that is a problem that very few companies and very few people are addressing still. And so there have been minor changes, but not so much. And so if the staff is still in this position where we are only bringing in financially stable white people, that is going to reflect on the policies that the staff puts into place, upon the leadership, and the things that they find important. Such as your question, not being humored by higher up executives about, reach like finding ways to elevate authors who don't have as many opportunities to be published. So I know that specifically within like picture book publishing for illustrators and things, we are constantly going out to social media and we are like at least our design department is very forward thinking about this and trying to find people who might not have ever had the opportunity to be published before and people from different backgrounds like to be able to have those voices be elevated. Like, but again, that's like these are the problem there is that it's the lower level staff that are championing this. It's like the assistant designers and the designers. It's not the CEOs of companies. It's not like, the higher ups that are championing those changes. It's a lot of times the reason why people get burnt out within like the work industry, not just publishing, but in general, it's because any kind of like progressive change that we want to make does sometimes fall down to the people on the bottom of the totem pole. Um, and then it's hard to work your way up from there. And so hopefully I'm like optimistic that trends will continue, there was during the summer of strikes, is that 2 years ago now? I'm totally like my brain doesn't follow time anymore. But like one of our book publish com like one of our competing book publishing companies, HarperCollins, went on strike. And I do think that that made a difference with how the entire industry worked. And so I think if people continue speaking up about these things, I think that's important. I think that there should be a push to finding additional ways to reach out to people. But as of now, it's just not something that the big five are doing. I would be surprised though if indie publishers were not doing more. And that's like something I've always thought about too, is like I think it'd be really excellent to work for an independent publisher one day. People who are, really really passionate about working for the people we're making books for and not just, you know, old white men. But that's where we're at. And it's an everyday struggle, of course. Things have been moving slowly in the right direction, but um, not fast enough by any stretch. Oh yeah, follow-up question. How do you see the pay structure and publishing shifting? You spoke about small profit margins. Is there a way publishing can shift the business model to offer more financial stability to their employees? Also, silly little check on, do you have healthcare? Good question. The important stuff. And yeah, I think first of all, talking about money within publishing is half the battle. I think for so long, um, like I call them the old guard of publishing. It's, the people who are 50 and up who would champion the idea of, you know, smile with what they give you, be grateful, and then don't say anything, and then just do like put your head down and work 80 hours a week and don't get overtime, don't get benefits, etc. And like be okay with that because it's a privilege to work in this industry. And yeah, it is a privilege to work in this industry because they make it so difficult to break into. So I feel privileged that I am here because it is so hard to get internships, let alone jobs. But it shouldn't have to feel like a privilege to work at a company. Like it should just be like, yes, this is my job and I'm doing it and I'm giving you my life force to give you money. I shouldn't have to say thank you for, doing that also. We should be a team. And so I think part of it is like finally this old guard of publishing is they are moving out of the company. They are retiring. People say that publishing moves very slow, and that is very true. Publishing as an industry is very slow. someone very grimly told me that the publishing industry changes one funeral at a time, because people work in the industry until they die, which is true. Like people just don't retire because the job is not physically strenuous and everyone likes to read. So we've got people who are working here who are 90 years old. So like that's that person's worked here for 70 years. And it's like that person's had the same opinions for 70 years. And guess where they are? Right at the top. And those opinions are from 1950. And I don't like that decade. So it's like none of the 2020 opinions are reflected anywhere up above like the second rung of the totem pole in terms of control. So but the more people talk about this kind of thing, I think the more it becomes increasingly difficult for people at the top to ignore. Um, which, like, I think 15 years ago, the starting salary in publishing was $30,000. And now it is 50,000 within the big five. Indie publishers pay less than that, because they make less money. And so the pay structure is shifting. I feel like it's starting to level out. Feel like we're starting to get to the point where like there's going to be a pause again for a good chunk of time where they're not doing increases in salaries. But the last several years, they've been increasing the starting salary every couple of years just to like try to stay competitive, they say. Um, then that's what it's about to them. It's about being competitive and not about like humanity. But that's, it's okay. That is what it is. Uh, you got to smile or you cry a little. Um, but like I like these are all like really important things because despite not being like paid what I think that all of us are worth, I still love my job and I love my people. I think what I'm doing is very important. It's just something worth fighting for. And so I think that there's a difference there. It's like I think that this industry is worth fighting for. I think the people in the industry are worth fighting for because I think we're doing like important work. So I think that the best way for publishing to like shift their business model, the problem is like I mean, I don't like book prices should not increase. I don't think that that's the solution. I don't think passing the cost of the books onto the consumer is the solution to like increasing people's wages. I think it still comes from a point of like CEOs and the top people of the company making too much money. Um, and I don't like some some publishers just and then some publishers spend their money willy-nilly in weird ways that it's like, why did you do that? Why are you spending your money on that? Like all of the big five publishers just invested in all of their each individual, like their own AI software that's for their company. And it's like, come on, guys. Like this is the one thing that people in books don't like is AI. And then they like invest a ton of money in developing like ours has its own name, its own personality, its own website and everything. It's just for Macmillan. Um, and then PRH has their own, like all because AI is the new thing, that's what they want to spend their money on. And then they send out surveys and they ask people questions about like, hey, what do you like how are you using AI? Like this is across the industry, right? Like how much are you using AI? And then publishing professionals are like, not at all. We don't want to. It's like not what we want you to spend your money on. Also, it's bad for the environment. Stop doing that. So there are things that like every few years, a new trend comes up and they're like, let's spend a bunch of money on this thing. And we're like, don't do that. Pay us instead. So I think that there are just like bad decisions that happen. Um, and I, I hope that like these bad decisions will continue to like, go away and the new things can come in. But I do have healthcare. And the best thing about my healthcare is that I get a free pair of glasses every single year because for publishing, they need your eyeballs to work. So they have great vision. And that's excellent because I don't have great vision. So that's beautiful news. And I would say that Macmillan actually specifically has a healthcare package than the other publishing houses. One of the reasons why I want to work at Macmillan until I die, until I'm 90, and my funeral happens, and then the industry changes, is because I think that Macmillan specifically has the best benefits across the industry. They give us mental wellness days once a month, and so we get one Monday off per month and we get Flex Fridays year round. So we can have like half of a Friday off every single week, or we can have every other Friday completely off. So mental wellness days plus flex Fridays, like you could have a 4-day weekend once a month. And it's like essentially a 4-day work week and it's fully remote and they offer great healthcare. And I get like a good chunk of vacation days and discretionary days. Like it's a lot of time off. Our winter break last year was like 2.5 weeks long. It was 18 days. That was excellent. We're closed for all major holidays, including Juneteenth, which I shouldn't have to say, but like Macmillan recognizes like not just the white Christian holidays, which is nice. So there is like a lot of value to, I think, Macmillan's benefits and things that they give, which is nice. That makes up for being paid slightly less, I think, is like the fact that I can work sometimes have a 3-day work week. I think that is lovely. So happy for to have healthcare. Haven't had to use it yet, knock on wood. Hopefully that continues.
Cool. Thank you so much for all of that insights.
Yeah.
One of the people who was here earlier, she had to leave, but she sent me a question.
Mm.
It was dealing with like diversity in children's books involving translation, and she was just wondering like how much of a priority are those types of books, like utilizing translation and stuff like that.
Yeah, it like sadly, I don't think we really do much. We do Spanish edition of books, some books, and that's really it. There is not a whole lot, and I think this is pretty indicative of the industry as a whole, that there is not enough push on translation in general. I took some classes while I was at University of Iowa for like the translate. Shoot, I'm blanking on the actual name of the course. But I know that there is. I'm blanking on the name of the lit mag as well. Is it Translate Iowa?
Translate Iowa Project and Boundless.
Great, yeah, Translate Iowa project excellent open mics and an excellent magazine and I was there, I had an excellent staff, and I took some courses as well, and that's what like opened my eyes to like translations in general from other languages into English. I thought were excellent just to provide diverse perspectives on like numerous topics. I have several books I still keep on my bookshelf, specifically poetry, that I open back up again and again because I'm like, wow, this is really amazing. Um, so we don't, and like that's the same like where we're not like translating a lot of our books from English into other languages. We are also not taking a lot of other books. I'm working on a book right now that we're translating from French. Um, but that's the only book I have worked on that's been a translation. It's been, yeah, I think it's a much rarer thing. Macmillan has like other bases in different countries. Like we have like Australia, um, and a few others, I think. And like where we would publish, I think potentially in other languages there. And I do think that's like, I don't know. I feel like that is I feel like that's an empty spot where we are not actually capturing as many of the voices as we definitely could be, which is sad. And I think that's the industry. Again, that's an industry as a whole too. I think these things are important to push on, which is why I think the young editors that come in and want to champion these things, as long as they stay passionate about it, I think that that's like how the industry changes. And so I don't know. I hope people that like to ask challenging questions continue to get jobs in publishing, because I think that there aren't enough people who are asking challenging questions, because they're like me, like a straight white man, and I don't ask enough challenging questions, and I know that others like me do not either. So I think that, just having diverse perspectives on the staff will definitely allow for more of those books to be uplifted, and I think that that's really important. Which is why, like, I'm here and I like talking to people because it's like please come help this industry. It needs help. It needs to be saved from itself. And there's great people there that do want to make a difference, and there's really great communities within the companies to make those differences. And I think it's really valuable because working book publishing is bigger than just one person. Um, it's for all of the readers in the world. It's for all the little kids that have not seen themselves in the books growing up. It's it's for these kids that have just no idea of the outside world because their parents haven't taught them, through no fault of their own. Their parents just haven't taught them about the world and the people within it. And so then they go into school and they have these prejudices that, are just ingrained by the age of 3 that is hard to like counteract. And so getting books into these kids' hands, I think, is so valuable, just to protecting people. So I hope that people can continue to fight for these things, because it's really, really important.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions right now?
I specifically earlier I mentioned that I decided I wasn't as passionate about editorial. And that comes from like a couple of things. Um Part of it came from the fact that uh I think because I think work-life balance is an important conversation too. And part of the reason I didn't want to go into editorials, the work-life balance. Um I think that, and this has been changing, but specifically with an editorial, there's not a lot of time to actually do the editing part of the job during the day. That usually gets sent home with you. For people, to do on the subway or the toilet or in bed, and you're just doing it the entire time you're home, or when you're cooking food over the stove and you've got a book in one hand and you're like stirring the pasta in the other hand, and it's just a disaster. Um, and so editorial does have like a bad reputation of not having like a lot of separation from their work and home life because their days are set up with a ton of meetings, because people like me schedule a bunch of meetings on their calendars. They don't have time to actually do their work because I'm just talking to them about the work they have to do, which, yes, it's a flaw in the organizational structure of the company for sure, in all publishing companies. Um, but because of all these meetings and things, they just don't have time. And so then they have to do the actual editing work off the clock. And that's hard. And I think that that is hard. And like that was a hard pill for me to swallow. And it's like, I don't know if I'm cut out for that. I've been pushing myself so hard in college and everything. It's like I want to have like some time to just, experience the world. And I have plenty of friends who are editors, and they live very full lives, and they don't just get caught up just editing books. But it's, like how teachers, because it's a passion industry, right? Like teaching. And so, teachers go home and they grade papers and they do crafts for their students and they practice things and they set curriculums and stuff because they don't have time during the day because they're teaching during the entire day. It's a very similar thing. But luckily, Severance, the TV show, exists, and that's forcing people to talk more about work-life balance, I think. So thank goodness for the cultural zeitgeist and for there to be a popular TV show discussing work-life balance, because it's becoming more and more of a question that people talk about in interviews, and I think that's great. I think it's awesome that when people are applying to jobs, they're asking, what is the work-life balance like? Because that's so important to understand like what your own boundaries are in terms of like how much effort and energy you can put into a job. That's something that's not just publishing, that's everywhere. Like being able to work in a place that respects your time, I think is really important. My specific role, I work essentially from 9 to 5. And that's because I work on the administrative side. And because I work exclusively on the administrative side, once 5 o'clock hits, people are leaving the office. I work with outside vendors like the printers and things. They close their office doors at 5 o'clock. If I stay after work and do anything after 5, not a lot can get accomplished. So today I worked until 6, but like there's not much I can do beyond the regular 5 o'clock cutoff. And that's really nice because I'm a workaholic and I like to just like I just I worked until 6 today and I shouldn't have, because I was not getting paid for that hour. But sometimes, I just want to get everything done. I want to clear my inbox out, that kind of thing. And so it's nice for me to have something that saves me from myself, where like nothing else can get done. I think if you are go like when you're looking for jobs and you are like becoming an assistant, you have to protect yourself because no one else is really going to look out for you in the same way that you will look out for yourself. Theoretically, you have an amazing manager, you have an amazing supervisor, and they will care for you. And like that, I think is very true within publishing. A lot of people have really excellent managers and they have great relationships because they're wonderful people that work in book publishing. But they're still not going to look out for you in the same way that you can look out for yourself and you can advocate for yourself. And so taking care of yourself is the most important thing you can do. And if you really can't do something off the clock, or like if you're really swamped, advocating for yourself and talking to your manager is always recommended. And if you can recognize that that's something that like you're either not so good at right now or that you're trying to get better at, that's great. That's a great first step because I'm horrible at this. And I'm such a people pleaser that I will just work forever until I am bone. And then I'll be like, I did a good job, right? And then I just melt down into dust. So that's that's like, it's something that I want to continue working on. And it's as long as you're aware of it, then you can continue, hopefully we'll continue getting better. But practicing work-life balance is such a hard, delicate thing. And I know y'all being in college, you know that better than anyone else. They say it's a full-time job, but also they don't pay you to do it. So you have to also have a job on top of your full-time job. So isn't that convenient? And it's usually for the university in which you are taking classes. So it's all just some circular system. Speaking of university jobs, I also like was involved on campus. I had campus jobs. I was an RA. I was a co-RA with Layla over here. So small world, party time. And but I also like worked within like publishing related jobs on campus. The Iowa Review has like internships and things that you can do. Any of the literary magazines on campus are great ways to get involved. If you can like cite these on resumes or cover letters, that's excellent. Um, but like, so if you have any questions about ways to get like ways that I've gotten involved or ways that you could get involved or things like that, I did go to your same school and like some things have changed, some things have not, and so I can definitely give advice there too. Or if you have questions about like resumes and cover letters, I'm happy to talk about that too. The Columbia Publishing course charged me $12,000 to make me a resume, and I would love, to like help you make a resume for free, instead of $12,000. But if you want to pay me $12,000, that's okay too. I will also gladly accept all of your money. So yeah, I don't know I don't know if that's interesting or if there's anything else. So I'm happy just to like any career advice on like meeting with people or like how you can like break into the industry if you're interested in that. Like I'm happy to answer any questions like that too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in general, maybe your top tips for resumes when you might not know exactly, because I know they always talk about like, oh, you should have numbers on your resume, but like when you're not exactly sure what those numbers are.
Yeah, that's a good question because so I went when I was applying to things at the University of Iowa, I went to the Career Center and I submitted my resume and I thought they gave good advice. Um and then I also went to like the Columbia Publishing course and then they gave me like completely different advice. And then I've listened to speakers come in and talk, to me at a variety of different events and things, and they've all given me contrasting advice, right? That's like the biggest headache of applying to jobs is the fact that nobody knows like the definitive answer on like resumes and things. Um, but I do think that there are things that are very true universally about publishing specifically, to be aware of, and that I can definitely tell you those things that I learned from Columbia. Um, because you don't know these things until you've worked in the industry and you've applied and you've like had a resume that's been successful. Um, so like book publishing specifically, you can't have any typos or like errors in your cover letter or resume. That's like a big one. And so like using proper grammar is very, very important. Um, and jobs in general, if you don't apply to like a job within publishing after it's been posted within like 48 hours, a lot of times it's kind of a moot point to apply, which is a really difficult thing because I was told that for every one editorial assistant job that opens up, 500 people apply. That is a staggeringly disgusting number. Like 500, like that competition is ridiculous. But what I learned is that like out of those 500 people, about half of them are instantly removed from contention because they didn't follow the instructions on the application. So maybe they didn't submit a cover letter. Maybe their resume was 2 pages long. You're supposed to, a lot of times you need to keep it to one. You know that like thing on like websites and companies where, you've just spent 3 hours making the perfect resume for this job and you've done a cover letter, and then there's that online portal where it says, now put in all the stuff you just wrote in your resume also in our online portal. And it's irritating and takes another hour, and you're like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Those are required. And if you don't do them, then they will just throw your resume out the door, which is frustrating because we all hate that stupid website thing. Um, but it is required. And so definitely do it, because that you don't want that to be the reason why you don't get considered. So that's important. And so following those instructions, because when you have, if you, like being in the mind of an HR like hiring manager, and you have 500 resumes and cover letters, you're not looking for reasons to like keep people. You're looking for reasons to remove things out of the pile. Then when you get down to like 50, then you're looking for reasons like, okay, now I'm looking for like the best of the 50. So like first you need to like survive that first round of like removing people. And so that's like avoiding typos, etc. Making sure you put the right company name in your cover letter. Don't do what I did and put the wrong company name in your cover letter. That was horrible because I was told, make sure you submit within 48 hours of the job being posted. And I was like, yes, I will make sure I do that. So I stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning writing a cover letter that I copy and pasted from a different job application I did. And then I was delirious and then submitted it and didn't change the company name, which was super embarrassing. And I didn't realize it for weeks. I didn't realize it until I went and copied that same cover letter into another job. And I was like, oh no, that's so bad. That makes me just want to cringe until I like go into a little hole and then just rock back and forth forever. So don't do that. Don't do what Jacob did. Read it over. If you're like on hour 47 and a half and it's 5 o'clock in the morning and you haven't slept at all, go to sleep. You're much better suited submitting the resume at hour 50 of the job being posted, knowing that you looked it over with like a fresh set of eyes, than it for it to potentially have errors, because I know for sure I didn't get considered at all for that job application. But maybe if there were no typos, I could have. So definitely just be careful and cautious about those things. And then you want to find way and then you want to find ways to like make yourself stand out, right? And so numbers are always great. Like Sophia said, like if you work on a literary magazine and your literary magazine received X number of submissions, like 1,000 submissions or like 300 submissions or 50 submissions, that's a good number to include, because especially if you're going into editorial or you're going into like marketing or publicity, that shows like that you can read a bunch of different things and evaluate their merit. That's great. So any kind of figures you can give, like nice stats and stuff about yourself, those are great. Like those speak to people. Numbers speak to people, I guess. But more importantly than that, a lot of times job posting, like job boards and like the actual position will have like bullet points of like responsibilities they want you to do. And usually those bullet points will have an action verb right at the front that's like organized, like organize meetings for the company and edit manuscripts and this and that. You should take those words that are at the front of those bullet points and put them in your resume also. That is essential because essentially, a lot of companies, I can't speak to any of the publishing companies specifically, but many companies in general either have AI or some kind of filterable system where it's essentially like a glorified control F, where they are looking for those action verbs in your resume, and the people with the most hits then get like these positions, like they're the ones who get followed up on with the positions. So you want to make sure you're following the job board posting as close as possible, and then also making yourself shine, like advocate for yourself here. You don't just have to have only work experience on your resume. Including coursework on your resume is something that I did and I found to be successful, because like trying to find a job in book publishing specifically, like trying to find an internship was difficult. And how am I supposed to get it's the age-old question. How do I get experience without getting a job first? And so sometimes the best thing you can reflect to the experience thing is if you're doing something in class. So I have found I have found success in including my publishing coursework in my resume. I took publishing one and publishing two at the University of Iowa, and I just wrote that down on my resume. I was like, I made a book for a class and I made a magazine for a class. And I thought that was very helpful. And those are the kinds of things that my internship supervisor asked me about when she was interviewing me initially. So I think those like you can definitely include coursework. I think that's an excellent idea, especially if it's directly related to the jobs you're applying to. That's great. Having a section for skills that specifically talk about like the software that you are like fluent in or at least aware of, like Microsoft Word, like Microsoft Suite, the Adobe Suite. Like these are things that again that they will ask you on the job board. And if they say like preferable if you know how to use this random application you've never heard of before, put that on your resume. And then if you get an interview, stay up all night and then watch a bunch of YouTube videos on how to use that software. So I don't know. That's not great advice, but it is something that I think a lot of people do, including myself. Um, so I think that like, just being willing to be flexible and like being willing to learn, I think is very important. Within publishing itself, people always say it takes 6 months to learn how to do any of the jobs. And that's really nice because that means people are forgiving when you have no idea what the heck you're doing for the first 6 months. I've unfortunately worked here for 2 years, and now they expect me to know what I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm doing still. And I think that that is kind of true for most people that no one really has any clue what's going on most of the time. And that is reassuring. So just know that like people are very understanding if you don't know what's happening, at least for the first couple of years. I'll check back in a couple of years from now and let you know if people really just can't stand that I have no idea what I'm doing. Because I won't be able to stand it pretty soon. Uh, so yeah, I do think that just including as many of those buzzwords as possible, as many of those hard skills as possible, like fluency in those programs, keeping it to one page, avoiding any typos and things, very valuable. And then apply as soon as you can, making sure that it's okay, that it's all clean and it's good. Have a friend look over it. I wish I did that instead of what I did because that was so embarrassing.
For sure. Thank you for all of those tips. I was also wondering about like I know you talked a little bit about the Columbia Publishing course, but do you
Mhm.
feel like that was a big factor in you actually getting into the publishing industry? Like, was that a really good choice? And do you think it's something that like everyone who wants to get into publishing industry should at least look into, or like what's kind of your stance on it?
Okay, so everything I'm about to say also is the qualifier that I have horrible imposter syndrome, and I still don't think I deserve to be in publishing. And so, what like my thought, like the thinking that yes, the Columbia Publishing course definitely helped me get into the publishing industry is also like influenced by the fact that I don't think I'm worthy of being in it in general. So I felt like I needed to do something to get myself more qualifications, but I don't know. Like I know that there are plenty of people that get jobs within publishing, internships, entry-level jobs without ever having any related publishing experience. We've got like STEM majors applying for entry-level jobs who have never worked in books or a bookstore or anything, and they get jobs without an internship or anything. And then they learn on the job. And that's great. That's awesome. I took the more traditional path, and that is also good. And like I think it does help. And I think specifically what it helped me with was, having connections and having a place to live when I was looking for apartments in New York City for 6 weeks. And I do think it gave me insider tips and tricks on how to apply for jobs. And every class session would like every day there'd be like 2 to 3 guest lecturers that would come in from different companies, and you could network with them and do informational interviews with them, and they would tell you about their job. And they would then like if you ever had to apply for a job with them, you could say like, hey, do you remember when we had that chat 2 months ago and we really hit it off? And they'd be like, yeah, I remember you. Let me give you $50,000 a year and I'll give you work. And then that's awesome. And so like there's building those connections like that, I think is very useful. And that's not something you can replicate anywhere else aside from those like publishing institutes. There's Columbia. There's NYU has one that's slightly cheaper, and then there's one in Denver. And I know there might be a couple others as well, and they crop up. University of Iowa specifically is one of only like two undergraduate institutions in the country that has publishing programs for undergraduates. So like that's excellent. If you are interested in publishing and you're not necessarily like on the publishing track or something, taking a class at the Writing Center, etc., engaging within the publishing industry, like you're in the place to do it. If you're interested in this job, this is where you want to be. Um, I didn't realize, like, I do think I made the most out of my time at Iowa. But if you were unaware of that fact, like, this would give you a leg up over a lot of other people. And so, the publishing institutes, they're very valuable. It really comes down to what you think you can afford. And $12,000 is a huge ask. They don't often offer a lot of scholarships, and that's a big setback. And for that reason, they are definitely not required. Like I said, lots of people get jobs without them. I do think that it was helpful to me. I think I was able to make connections with certain people in certain positions within the industry that gave me like an in. And I think that the people who run those programs, like Columbia's publishing course boasts a 95% job placement rate within a year. That's because the director of that program, her name is Shay Earhart. She's a gem and she fights tooth and nail for you if you do well in the class. So if you're like attending the lectures and you are making the most out of the program and you're getting all your homework done and you're meeting with her in office hours, she's going to get you a job because she's going to care about you. And she is like a legend in the industry. And so she has lots of connections where she can be like, hey, I like this kid. You should give him work. And they'll be like, okay, I trust you. Shay Earhart, local legend. And then they will give you a job because local legend endorsed you. So that's awesome. And that's the case for the other publishing institutes too. Like they have those people that are there to uplift you and support you. And so that's why I think it is very valuable, um, but not required. And like, I don't know, maybe I'm a local legend and maybe you want to reach out to me and I can help you break in instead. So if you want, like, please do. You are more than welcome to reach out to me. I can put my email in this chat right here um, for y'all, and you can email me at my company email. And if you want to like ask me questions about your resume specifically or your cover letter, if you want to have like a one-on-one like coffee chat sometime, even though I got promoted today, it doesn't mean I'm in charge of hiring at all. So I can't offer anyone any jobs, but I can help you get in contact with people who are in charge of like hiring people if they want to meet with you, or if you would want to meet with them, or if you want to meet with other people in different parts of the industry. If like maybe you like publishing, or maybe you like publicity, maybe you like editorial, maybe you like subrights when you get to like sell book ideas to Netflix for a bunch of money. That sounds really cool and fun. I've heard really great things about it. You get to know a bunch of secrets before everyone else, and that would actually drive my brain crazy. I couldn't handle it. Don't put me in that job. I wouldn't do it. Um, so I can help you get connected with folks as well. And that's for free. Because I am the bargain bin version of Shay Earhart. Um, and that's on my LinkedIn profile. And if you don't believe me, you can go check. So yeah, I encourage you to just be involved in whatever ways you can, and it does not require some kind of publishing institute to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jacob. That was all so entertaining and you're so fun. Um, and it was all very insightful and helpful. And if anyone ever has any other questions, like he said, you can email him or you can let me know, and I also have his email, so I can send it to you. Um, and yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And yeah, we're all set for today.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.